All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our holiday extravaganza. I am very honored on behalf of Dan and our team to welcome back, as Chef Michael put it, a tradition now, which is having Chef Michael Smith cook along with us. His team has worked with us in a very protracted amount of time to put this one together. And we are very thankful for all the efforts that were put in on him and his team, as well as our team, to put this together. We have an exciting night and some great food that is coming along. We again encourage you to put any questions into the chat, but with that, let's get going. So without further ado, Chef Michael Smith, a restaurateur, also a farmer, a book author, a hotel owner, and an overall great human being, is going to join us again for the next hour or so to show us some tips and tricks for the holiday season, as well as just when you want to impress your friends or just impress your significant other or just having fun. So with that, Chef Michael Smith.
Thank you, John, and welcome to Prince Edward Island, everybody. This is Michael Smith, and I'm here in my test kitchen in my backyard. The Inn at Bay Fortune is just up the road here in Fortune, but this is kind of, the little skunk works that I have in my backyard. Lots of fellas out there with a auto shop or a wood shop or some of the tech you guys deal with, but for me, it's a little test kitchen. So nice to be here, nice to be sharing the holidays, the season, some flavors, and of course, it is a tradition all of a sudden. After 3 years, it's just wonderful to take the time and do this. I know that there's 100 or so of us scattered around North America, and it's fun to be able to just share this tradition. So what we're going to do is kind of two things tonight. I'd like to set you up with some tricks up your sleeve for the holidays ahead. I think most of us find ourselves heading off to a party, John, now and then, and we need a few tricks up our sleeve now and then. So I want to show you some things like that. But I also, of course, we're going to cook along a bit tonight. I'm going to show you how to take that incredible filet mignon that John and Dan shared with everybody watching, and how to treat it with the kind of respect that a chef would treat filet mignon. It's a wonderful piece of meat. It's an inspiring piece of meat to cook with. And once we get to the filet and the sauce and the things with it, we'll slow down and we'll cook together, cook along, and I'll give you lots of tips and pointers as we go. But on top of that, just some stuff that I'm going to rapid fire at you. Don't try and follow along as I make the cocktail or the bread or the like, but just absorb the sort of the big, bold lessons. It's nice, again, of course, to be here on behalf of i-Virtualize, live and nationwide. John, Dan, and all the folks at at Cisco and IBM. Thanks for sponsoring the evening. I'll also take lots of time and pause now and then, make sure I'm getting caught up in questions and everything. So, John, I haven't seen you in a while. How your cooking skills doing? You had a good year behind the stove?
Yes, we have, Chef Michael. Yes, we have. Sorry, I thought I was on mute. We have. It's always fun, as I have mentioned before, Chef. We get such great feedback from this event every year. The tips and tricks that you have shared with us, they're not tricks. They're just solid tips that people have used, and some of the recipes we've cooked. I was out for lunch a couple of times this week with some folks that have been part of this event now the last couple of years, and they're still cooking some of those meals that you put out for us in the past. So and I was saying that to Al earlier. So Al is Chef Michael's technical man, and he was saying, people start asking.
I'm looking at right now. Yeah, cool.
People start asking.
Thank you, though, John.
People start asking in June and July whether we're going to do it again, Chef. So it's not just a tradition; it's something that people look forward to. So thank you very much for doing this with us.
Right on. Well, I guess part of the tradition for this party, for just about any party that I ever go to, and anytime I start cooking, I like to fill my glass up a little bit first. So why don't we start with my all-time favorite cocktail, just a simple gin and tonic. I guess I want to show you how a chef makes a gin and tonic. Now, of course, tonight we are backed up by this wonderful sort of party guide, if you will, the shopping list. Everybody's had a chance to look at this, and everything that I do tonight, from the cocktail right on down the line to the filet mignon in the sauce, you can trust that all the words, all the little nuances are right there in the wording for you tonight. As well, thrilled to share my new cookbook with everybody. Lots of you have already received the new cookbook. John, Dan, thank you for sharing this book with everybody. I'm thrilled to share it with the world. And if your copy hasn't arrived yet, of course, it'll be arriving soon. We did have a chance to personalize every single one of them. They're all autographed, of course. And the book is called Farmhouse Vegetables, and it really does represent how I cook at home, how we're influenced by the wonderful garden that we built at the Inn at Bay Fortune, but just that sort of vegetable forward cooking style that so many of us follow these days. And we'll get to more of that later. I'm forgetting about that cocktail. Back to work. So let's make a cocktail. Let's make a gin and tonic the way a chef would. Let's think about let's think about gin. Gin, of course, is really no different than vodka. It's just making spirits and trying to load it up with as much flavor as you possibly can. When you make vodka, you're making the same spirit, more or less, but you're making it specifically without flavor. When it comes to gin, it's all about adding flavor to those same neutral spirits. So I'm saying that because, well, the fellow that took all the time, got up early in the morning, made the gin, well, he was already in the mindset of adding flavor. So why shouldn't I be too? And why not you? So I'm making enough here for 2 cocktails. So that was 2 nice aggressive pours, shall we say. And there's so many great gins out there these days. Many of them made right here on Prince Edward Island. Now, next up, not a very surprising ingredient. Lime, very common. Lemon, also very common. But in the spirit of this cocktail, making it the way a chef makes it, I want to finish the cocktail with lots of aromatic subtlety that really enhances the aromatic subtlety that the distiller already put in the cocktail. That's an elaborate way of saying, hey, lime juice, but also the lime zest. Taking a second and just zesting that lime using a classic microplane grater. Most of us have one of these around these days. It's pretty much a standard part of any good craft cocktail. Your kit, if you will, for making craft cocktails. It's a standard tool. You can see right there that wonderful dusting of flavor, really, and I can smell it right away. The whole place smells great. So full lime, and all that flavor from that lime skin. And when we cook, we understand, of course, that there really is more flavor, literally more lime essence, more strong lime flavor in the oil in the skin, in that little bit of skin that I just zested into that cocktail. There's more lime flavor there than there is in the actual juice itself. There really is. So what I'm doing here is really amping up that lime flavor, that lime aroma, that lime perfume. But of course, at the same time, taking the time to add all this acid, all this sourness, all this classic lime juice, which is what I think makes this cocktail, hey, to me, it's the best darn cocktail going, a proper gin and tonic, because it's so nicely balanced, because it does have a combination of bitter, of sweet, of all this working together, and of course that sourness, the bitter, the sweetness, and the sourness. So at this point, I've got a glass. I filled it with ice. I've added the gin. I've added the lime zest, and now one more thing that you can add too. Have a look here. We've got so many options in the world of fresh herbs, whether it's fresh mint, of course, but any savory herb. Think of sage or rosemary, lavender, anything at all. Rosemary in particular, wonderful woodsy fragrance. Lavender, excellent flavors as well. That beautiful perfume flavor. Sage, often described as having woody flavors. And here's the genius. Take those flavors, whatever you happen to have, and just drop them right on in. Okay, doesn't take much. On goes that standard mason jar lid. Yeah, here we go. And then just bang her. Okay, so there's my gin, my lime juice. Now over to the glassware. These are Grand Ballons. These are the classic gin and tonic glasses that are so popular in Europe. You know, you might if you Googled up something like world's best glass for a gin and tonic, you know, not that I've ever actually done that. I hear you security guys keep a close eye on my browsing history. That's okay. I'm happy to have looked up the world's best glass for gin and tonics, and there it is. So fresh ice, cocktail ice, and now here's the genius of a simple mason jar. Just use that same lid. All right. Okay. Try and not get so many herbs in there, but you know, get the good stuff. More or less equal amounts. Now I'm making two just for fun. I usually do. Um, I'm only going to have one though, I think. You can see what's happening. So I've left nothing, none of the spirit, none of the juice, just the mess is left behind. And then, of course, one key ingredient to go. I think the sign of a proper bar is a bar that keeps everything that should be cold, cold, like the tonic, you know, and keeps the things warm that should be warm. Anyway, you get it. This is, so at heart, of course, as you taste this or when you make this for yourself, at heart, of course, standard gin and tonic. All the normal things are present. If there's anything different here, it's just that there's more fresh aroma added at the end. And so it's a fun way to you know, get a party started, that sort of thing. Have some fun with the gin and tonic. Add a little bit of a touch to it. Any of the herbs that you particularly like or have kicking around. And so here we go. Cheers, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get this party started. Mm. Mm. Gosh, life is good. Mm. I
Sorry,
taste the
Chef.
mint
One quick
in
question.
particular.
Sorry,
Sure.
in regard to the drink. Would the same thing apply to any drink, for example, when you're zesting a fruit like a margarita, for example, or is this specifically vodka or gin-based type drinks you're referring to?
No. That's a great question, John. Thank you. Anytime you're crafting a cocktail, in particular margarita, taking the time to zest the lime does add that aromatic complexity. It is often a signature way that a really good bar would level up something as simple as a margarita. It's a well-known secret for pastry chefs and chefs, bartenders. Citrus zest, orange, lemon, lime, all amazing. I better double check that. Yep, still amazing. Any other questions on a cocktail? Shall we carry on?
Yeah,
Okay. So there it is. That's a quick, just a quick trick up your sleeve. I mean, sometimes the simple things matter, and yeah, you know, a simple cocktail, it's fun to just get it right. But now, this next thing I'd like to show you, I want to sort of move quickly through one of the most fundamental and wonderful things that any good cook gets to do in their kitchen, and this is of course, the gift of bread. Being able to take four simple ingredients: flour, water, yeast, salt, combine them together, let each bring its own strengths to the party, let each develop and help a dough form, let each add to the structure of the loaf. It's a magical thing. It truly is a magical thing that cooks get to do. We're often held back, though, from making our own bread because it's perceived as a very complicated process. This time of the year in particular, you know, as we start to think about gifts, and many of us are well ahead of starting to think about gifts, of course. I hope you're well ahead. Again, my point, if you're going to go to perhaps a holiday party this evening, one of the most wonderful this season, one of the most wonderful things you can do is just bring with you a gift. And there's no more powerful or compelling gift than a gift that represents your own time. And so making a simple loaf of bread out of, you know, a buck's worth of ingredients is priceless, and you understand the point. And so perhaps if we can remove from the equation the idea that it is tough or hard or requires specialized this, that, or the other thing, then maybe we might be more inclined to actually make that loaf of bread and share it with somebody special this season. So that's what I'm going to try and do here in just the next minute or so. This is not going to take very long. And so I don't want to rush it, but I also want to show you how quickly this kind of bread works. This is because artisan breads taste best when they're given time. Time for the dough to stay alive. The longer the dough lives and breathes, the better the bread tastes. This is one of the most fundamental things about making bread. Paradoxically, we can also make that dough very quickly. Check this out. Here we go. Here's how to make a bread dough so quickly in just about a minute. I'm going to start with 3 cups of white flour, standard white all-purpose flour. I want to add some texture. I want to add some flavor, some depth. And so 1 cup of whole wheat flour, followed by whole grain goodness. 1 full cup of oats. Those are instant cooking, flaky oats. You've seen them a million times. And so next up, we've got the flour here. We've got a little bit of dough garnish going, but this is the flour part. Next up, we need yeast. And any yeast you have is going to work. They're all basically the same. The instant yeast, the rapid yeast, the fast yeast, the rise yeast, the fall yeast, they're all the same. So more or less a heaping teaspoon, 1 heaping teaspoon, and it goes. Now, if I wasn't paying attention to that camera that Al's working so hard to hold up right now, I'd be long done with this. Like, this is dead easy to make this. Next up, a little bit of salt. Salt, of course, is important, adds flavor to the dough, also helps it with how the water in the dough works. So 1, 2 simple teaspoons of salt. And so at the moment, there's all our dry ingredients. Okay, that's everything. And now we just mix it together. As we cookbook authors like to say, finally distributing the finer powders amidst the coarser ones. And what we've done here is created, with a whisk, a nice homogeneous mixture in phase of these various powders, flakes, dry bits, etc., etc. Now it's time for the water, and the genius part of why this recipe is so worth emphasizing, because it's the next step. It's making the dough. It's the kneading and the pushing and the work that stops us so many times, but it can be easier. We're going to hydrate this dough to the highest possible level, the highest level of hydration, a wet dough, just before a dough almost kicks into becoming a batter. We're going right to the edge. Here it comes. So for that to happen, we need 2 1/3 cups of warm water. And the temperature of the water does matter. You don't want to use cold water. This is an actual living, breathing process. I'm taking my time here. Everybody watching tonight values precision just as much as I do. And there we are. There's my exact 2 cups, followed by exact 1/3 cup. And we go. This is what constitutes very, very high hydration. In fact, first thing you do is this, just sort of, I'm not even stirring it yet. I'm just sort of swirling it. Watch what's happening. See, it's starting to absorb all that moisture. The moisture's starting to disappear, seemingly. Almost looking like spätzle or gnocchi almost. And now, next up, stir, but don't use this end of the spoon. Flip it, use something like that, and watch how quickly this goes together. Okay, this is a delicious, delicious whole grain, call it country bread, call it, whole grain bread, call it oatmeal bread, call it toast bread, call it country inn bread, call it whatever. It's delicious. And the secret, of course, is that it's easy to mix together. You saw how easy that was. Okay, now, of course, you're thinking, well, there's got to be a catch. There's got to be something. I don't see it as a catch. I said it right up front. The longer a bread dough stays alive, the better the bread will taste. As well, the longer it will stay fresh on your counter. This is why we value starters, sourdough cultures, natural fermentation starters that live for 100 years. They add so much flavor to our bread. And so when we think of bread as something that we should just bang it out, bake it up right away, it's done in hours, boom, that dough never had a chance. Unlike this dough, because here's the secret. This dough, this wet dough, have a look, like this dough, it now needs to rest overnight, okay? It's going to have to rest overnight. In fact, put a lid on it, okay? Put a lid right on it and give it time. Let it rest. Let it relax. Let's see what happens when we give it, shall we say, 8 hours? Al, did you see that Christmas tree? Isn't that nice? It's beautiful, that Christmas tree. That thing is so nice. The kids made that this year. Oh, by the way, look at this. Now, after 8 hours, boom, it rises. Okay, now look, we obviously made this before, but this is what it's going to look like, okay? Just linger on that for a second. You can see how much life there is in this dough. You can see how much it's risen. You can see how it's more than doubled in size. This sat overnight, and as it did, the water and the flour magically formed their own gluten. Because as it turns out, kneading the dough, pushing the dough, laboriously working the dough is a shortcut for time. And when we let the dough sit overnight, without even touching it, the time kicks in, and watch what happens. Gluten, you can see it. See it? Look at that. Look at how strong that dough has become. That gluten, of course, is essential. It's magical first. Like I am, after years and years of baking, I am still in awe of just Mother Nature building this magical balloon here out of this elastic gluten structure and allowing this magical balloon to blow up from the breath of the yeast, because that's what happens there. And so this is what happens the next morning, of course. This is what you're going to do the next day to get this bread. So I'm just quickly knocking it down, forming it up with a touch of flour, just rolling it, tightening it. Okay, you can see how easily it comes together after sitting overnight. Okay, and then into a standard loaf pan. Okay, standard loaf pan, and it's going to need a chance to rise. It's a good idea to mist it, to give it just a slight little touch of oil on the surface, just like that, because that will help keep that surface supple. That'll help keep that surface flexible so that it, it has its best shot at rising. Now, we've seen bread do this before, okay, because this is the next step. This is tomorrow morning, if you will. And we know that that dough is going to need a chance to rise a second time. But have you ever asked yourself, why? Every time I make bread, why does the bread dough recipe always ask us to let the dough rise twice? Why not just make the dough, slam it into the pan, let it rise, and bake it? Why do we always knock it down like I just did and let it rise a second time? Well, the answer is because that lets the dough live longer. We don't kill that dough as fast. That dough is now reinvigorated. We've knocked it down. We've put the dough back in touch with the food source. The yeast is happy again. It's back to eating all that food in front of it. It's going to start secreting gas, basically. The breath of the yeast is what's going to blow up that gluten balloon right there, and it takes time. You can see it happening right there. In fact, if you come take a close look at it, you can see it. It's magic. Look at it, Al. It's rising right up, right in front of your eyes. See, we'll just give it a second, okay? Just give it a second. All right, did you see that Christmas tree, Al? Isn't that beautiful? Look at that tree. That thing, you know how hard the kids have worked on that tree, Al? Like, come on. Oh, Al, look at that. My goodness. After an hour or two, you never know. Look at that. Isn't that something? And so this, of course, shows more or less what it looks like when it doubles. I took the time to oil the top of it, and that oil allows it to expand. And the obvious next step is to bake this at a very high temperature. We don't bake bread at low temperatures. We tend to bake it at 400 degrees or more in your oven. And so let's do the Food Network thing here. The magic of a Food Network kitchen. We've got every possible step under control. In fact, here's what it's going to look like after it bakes. Isn't that beautiful? Here, sorry, I got you rolling all over the place, but that's what it's going to look like. And so easy to roll up at that party with that beautiful loaf of bread and share all that time. In fact, let me cut that open for you. You want to see all this flavor. Just take a look at this up close. Such a beautiful way to make bread. Look at that beautiful crust. Perfect for toast. You can see all the flecks of flavor, how nicely developed the bread is. It's so simple to make bread this way. Give it a shot, eh? Everybody out there, give it a shot. Maybe that's one of the gifts tonight, is just a little confidence here. Of course, any questions on the bread? Look at that. We just managed to zoom through the world of bread there in just seconds. Kind of cool. But any questions? Obviously we could do 7 days and a convention with 50 speakers about the art and craft of artisan bread. But the real lesson here tonight is just that it doesn't have to be complicated, that it can be simple and straightforward. Easy for me to say, of course, but easy for you to say too, if you just take the time once or twice to give it a whirl. It doesn't have to be difficult. Shall we move on, John? How's it going?
Yeah, it's Chef Michael. There are no questions about the bread, but there was a comment in the chat from one of our attendees who did make it last night and talked about how simple it was to do and how well it turned out. So
nice to hear that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, you might say now it's time to get to the meat of the evening, shall we? We've got quite a few things that we're going to cook tonight, and it's all, of course, about celebrating the time of year, celebrating with our best. And again, John, Dan, thank you for sharing with all of us here tonight your best. And really, that's what this represents. So let's bring up some fresh ingredients and let's think about what's next. Look at this. Tonight, we're going to be cooking asparagus. Tonight, we are going to be making some kind of sauce. Tonight, we're going to be roasting vegetables. And tonight, we are cooking the king of steaks, the filet mignon, the very best. Thank you, John. I don't get to cook one of these every night. My kids are all excited. They know they're going to get a slice. And so, yes, when we prepare a special ingredient like this, it does require our best. And again, just like that bread, though, it doesn't mean that it has to be complicated or unattainable. And so what I'd like to show you tonight is how we can respect this wonderful ingredient, simply prepare it with tools and ingredients that we have at home, and go so far as to really elaborately plate it, show our respect for the ingredient by really plating it up nicely, and then, of course, sharing it with somebody special on your end. And so let's work our way through step by step. I want to make a sauce to go with it, vegetables to go along, and we're going to roast some vegetables too. And so the first thing I want to do is season this meat, season it. And the reason I want to do that is I want to give the salt a chance. This is a great tip for any time you're cooking steaks. Notice, of course, how I'm seasoning, sprinkling lots of salt. And what we're going to do is give this time, give this upwards of 90 minutes, an hour to absorb the salt. Now, that's a very simple way of describing the actual process that's going to happen here. But more or less what's going to happen as I wash my fingers, I got a hot soapy sink over here. It's funny, some of us out there, you just need to know I'm washing my hands. It's important to know that. It's important. So for now, though, back to this steak. What happens is the salt, as we know, more or less in general terms, salt encourages the moisture within the meat to come to the surface. The salt draws the moisture to the surface of the meat. That moisture combines with the salt. It creates a super saturated, salty sort of liquid. And then, because nature abhors that vacuum, the meat draws that moisture back into the meat. And now that moisture comes back into the meat seasoned. Again, a very simple way of explaining what happens. It takes time, but it is why this is one of the secrets that chefs often follow. Pre-season your meat. Okay, step one. Next step. I'm just looking at these ingredients thinking, well, what's going to take the longest tonight? And that's clearly the vegetables. And so that's why I'm suggesting let's get the veggies in the oven first. So I've got a roasting pan. Nice iron skillet. This would work well. Lots of us have pans like this at home, roasting pans, cast iron or the like, but you have another option. A standard skillet, a standard saute pan can work really well too. And here's why, because a standard skillet allows us to really jump these around in the oven, keep things moving. the potatoes, the mushrooms. Now, tonight I was able to use cremini mushrooms. And as the words say, we took the time to just cut those mushrooms into quarters, okay? Really just to sort of spread them out a little bit, open up the surfaces for more flavor. You can see what we've done here, okay? And by using, this isn't revolutionary, but a lot of little tips like this help. Instead of using that big heavy roasting pan, I'm just going to use a saute pan in the oven because it's easier to handle. All right, so there's the mushrooms. Now, tonight you received 2 full heads of garlic. By now I'm betting most of it is peeled out there. And when you take 2 heads of garlic, we wanted to save 2 cloves of that garlic. We're saving to go with the beef. And we're saving 2 cloves of that garlic to go with the sauce. But we're taking the rest and anything else you got in the kitchen, because frankly, the more roast garlic, the better, and we're roasting them whole. Now, I think in the wording, I may have even said, take the garlic cloves and cut them in half, okay? Whether I do or not, that's just a way of spreading out all those little wonderful, like this is going to be part of the star of the show. The filet mignon is obviously the big attraction tonight, but I'm telling you, these little roast garlic bites, and I'm going to take the time to cut them all in half because that just sort of spreads them out more, you know, spread the love. You get a little more bite per guest. And you might have a few little leftovers here, if that's okay, but this is designed to be a feed meal like this, you know, proper thing, as we would say. If you're going to cook up those filet mignons, you're darn well not be going home hungry tonight, right? So 2 full heads of garlic, cut those cloves into half. Have a look. See what I mean? You can sort of see when they're raw, and they're going to, as they roast, they're just going to turn into these wonderful little nuggets of flavor. So in we go. So just a few basic things missing in this pan. Seasoning and heat. So now I know I don't say this in the recipe, but why not put the pan on your burner on the highest possible heat? I haven't put any oil in this pan yet. I'm going to add the oil, but why not put it on the burner and just start preheating the pan before you put it in the oven? So there's that 2 tablespoons or so of oil. Vegetable oil, olive oil, anything but butter. If we use butter right now, it's just gonna burn. So a standard vegetable oil. I tend to cook a lot with grapeseed oil. I keep olive oil with me too. But grapeseed oil is generally the highest smoke point, the oil that can handle the most heat, that sautés best, so grapeseed oil. Next up, of course, the salt and pepper. A little bit of salt and pepper. Always salt and pepper. I always prefer my pepper freshly ground. I've done this my entire career, always freshly grinding pepper, because there is so much aromatic complexity in freshly ground pepper that you just often miss when you're, you know, just sprinkling out of some weird little glass thing that somebody left on the back of the table, you know. Anyway, this is starting to heat up. Going to give it a mix. And this is what I mean. You can see what I mean right away. It's just easier for the cook to have it in a saute pan. Okay, so that's why tonight I've chosen this pan instead of a standard roasting pan or the like. And it's not that the choice is right or wrong. It's just easier. So one of the nice things about cooking, one of the things that I think I learned long ago, staying present in the kitchen, trying to be a good cook, trying to get lots done, trying to get the prep list done that the chef had given me, basically, trying not to get fired. You learn really quick to pay attention to what's going on around you. And one of the things that's happening right now, right there to my left, is that pan is heating up, and I'm not paying attention. I'm not watching it because I can hear it. I can hear it. So as these little lessons sort of come to me, I'm going to share them with you because I'm just conscious of this sound. And in a moment or two, the cadence is going to increase to the point where it just says, hey, put me in the oven. So just pay attention to what's going on around you and seize those moments. So not worried about the pan right now. I know it's under control. And so I think the next thing I want to do is start to make the sauce. Okay. Before I do, I think we're getting good momentum here. Try not to go too fast. Obviously, as a chef, I could whip through this thing. I'd be done by now and on to dessert, but that's not the point tonight. And it's never really the point, especially when we're cooking at home. As a fellow that gets to cook both professionally and at home, I treasure that at home in particular, that we can take our time. And this is one of the things that draws us to cooking as folks that aren't perhaps professionals at cooking. Folks from other industries, like your industries, your high-tech industry. So many of us are drawn to the craft of cooking, to the process, to understanding that if we step by step our way through the craft, that results will reveal themselves. And that is very compelling. And it's especially in a world where so many of us are working on projects, and projects always take so much time to come to fruition. And so to go home at night or on the weekends and take the time to just be present, to just cook something basic and simple, to be there with the process, it's wonderful to get that instant payoff. And you learn so much when you're there in the moment, like listening. And so here we are. You can hear it. The pan's hot. I'm starting to smell that garlic. Again, though, this is a little bit of a shortcut. This isn't the way it's written in the recipe. I'm just trying to get some heat into the pan before I start roasting it. And so now, time to roast. I'm using a Meyer nonstick pan made right here on Prince Edward Island, and they can easily handle in and out of the oven just like that. And so there we are. Step one. Let's check. Yeah, I'm doing good. I seasoned the filet mignons in the party plan. The potatoes are now roasting. It's time to make the mushroom sauce. The first step on the mushroom sauce represents, without question, one of my all-time favorite things to do in any cooking, and that is simply browning butter. I'm going to take a couple tablespoons of butter. I've got a simple sauce pot right here. You know, just a nice heavy-duty sauce pot, again, made on Prince Edward Island. Pretty proud of that. I don't want it too hot, though, okay? Now let's brown this butter. And it goes, okay? Now it's going to melt. It's going to give me visual clues. I'm going to hear it. But at the same time, I've got to be ready, because as soon as that butter browns, I've got to be ready to take the temperature out of it, because I don't want to blacken it. And so the thing that's going to do that in the recipe, of course, is your onion. And so a lot of us, of course, have already taken the time to do this prep to get these onions diced up. And that's just such a strong strategy. Prepping like that in advance, strongly recommend. Such a good part of cooking. I did want to just show you, though, that it's easy to dice and mince an onion without all that weird sideways cutting thing. I don't know what that is. It's just keep it simple. Cut it one way, and then cut it the other. Okay, come on. I mean, that's how you do it. It's pretty straight ahead. Watch again. So cut one way, then the other. Mince it down. Okay, and now let's go back to that butter. So now I don't know if you can get that camera all the way in there, but I'll show you up close here. I'll bring it up to you. You can see it's starting to melt right there. Okay, it's not browning yet though, so I'm putting it back. So let's just think for a moment what happens. Browning butter, just one of the neatest things that happens in any kitchen. Butter, of course, 80 to 90% milk fat. Actually, let's get it right. It's hovering up around 90% milk fat. 12, sometimes as much as 15% water, and a small percentage of milk fat solids. The water boils away, the fat remains behind, and the fat can then raise in temperature and brown those milk fat solids. That's what happens. You can see it right there. Just starting to brown. Now I'm going to take a second because I'm ready. I got my onions. I'm watching it. I can see the color. It's that sort of yellowy golden, but it's deepening quickly. I'm present. I'm paying attention, you know, back to that craft. Beautiful brown butter. Smells wonderful. It's easy to sort of see what it looks like. Just that. And so I know if I just left that alone right now, there's enough retained heat in this pan, that butter is still gonna burn. So that's why the onions need to be ready, because now I'm safe again. I take the heat out of the brown butter. Lock the flavor in, but take that dangerous heat out of it. Okay, that's what's happening. Let's take a second, clean up my mess. This is such a standard part. We do this in so many little cooking jobs where we start with the oil, the fat, whatever it is, and we start with the onions. We bring in those onions to sort of cool it down. So that's what's happening. Next step, of course, is just getting ready to make the rest of this sauce. And let's think about this sauce for a second. I think, you know, one of the nice things about cooking a filet mignon, it is such a special ingredient. Like this is, you know, as I say, one of the kings of steaks, just like the stuff of kings, these filet mignons, and it requires your best. It requires a sauce, but I don't want to make a sauce phony. So how do you make a really tasty classic sauce when you don't have a pot of simmering beef stock on the stove or some wonderful beef stock in your freezer somewhere? Because I refuse to use the phony stuff in the boxes and the cans. That's not real beef stock. That doesn't line up with filet mignon. So how do you do this? Well, that's what we're about to do. We start with the onions, with the brown butter. Coming up next, some garlic. Just going to simply slice this thinly, stir it in there with the onions. All right. Looking good. I got to say, how many of you out there, when it's time to slice the garlic like that, am I like the only guy in the world who thinks about that scene in Goodfellas all those years ago? Anyway, just saying, moving on. Slicing the garlic, in it goes. And now you can see, I'm going to move it over quick so you can see what's going on. You can see how the onions and the butter are simmering, but now we stir in that garlic. Of course, I do not want to burn garlic. No, one of the most horrible flavors in the kitchen, burnt garlic. So really all I want to do right now is just get enough heat into this garlic that I can really smell it. Activate it is the word we would say. So that's what's happening. That's heating up. And then what comes next? Well, we're going to make this sauce. And we're going to use mushrooms. And we're going to make a puree of sorts. And so I want to open up these mushrooms. I want to get some surface area and release their moisture is basically what I want to do. I'm not afraid to clean them either. I think I wanted to leave these just the way they were in the package to show you what I do with them. Like, it is important to clean your vegetables. So I always take the time to clean the mushrooms. It's not a big complicated thing. Just giving them a good rinse. And I guess what I want to show you is that it's okay to work with them. If they're a little bit wet, it doesn't matter. Somehow there's a little bit of mythology out there with, you know, common mushrooms like this. We worry about somehow getting them wet or something. I'm not worried about it. I want it clean. I want to get that dust off. And so now just a quick slice. You can see how I'm doing it, protecting my fingers. What I'm really doing in here, as I said, though, is opening up surface area, making it easier to release the moisture, making the moisture within the mushroom far more accessible, if you will. You know, I find that fascinating. From day one, as a fellow now who's been cooking for 30 years, I've always been drawn to understanding why are we asked to do what we're asked to do, that there's a reason behind something, a practical reason behind all these cooking techniques. And at the moment, I'm not particularly focused on the perfect slice. I'm just banging surface area into these because I know that I'm going to puree this sauce. And so keeping an eye over here, the garlic smelling good, the onion smelling good, the mushrooms are sliced, in they go. Okay, hear that sizzle? That tells me my pan's nice and hot. And so what I want to do now, this is my only opportunity to sort of roast the mushrooms a little bit, get a little bit of caramelized flavor on them. Now, I don't want to do too much of that because I don't want to burn that garlic that's in there. But a little bit of sizzle. And in essence, what we're doing is softening up the mushrooms, bringing the moisture out of the mushrooms. So it doesn't need to be super fast. I'm going to turn this heat down a notch. Take that down more to a sort of a medium heat. And it doesn't take long, and the mushrooms make that wonderful little squeaky sound, that unique to mushrooms. There's just something about them. They start squeaking in the pan. They're the only vegetable to do that. I have no idea why. Please don't ask me. There's something to do with the moisture and the molecular cellular structure of a mushroom. Somehow that adds up to squeak. Yeah, and this is all very quick too. I mean, one of the things about making a beef stock, of course, the beef stocks that we make at the end, they take us days. They take days. You can't make that sort of thing quickly. You need really good ingredients, lots of great meaty bones and the like. And so I want to make a sauce relatively quickly. You can see how quickly it's working too. Let's bring the camera in here fast. You'll see. You're starting to see this at home. All that moisture, all that steam. The mushrooms quickly go to what looks like wet. They just start to seem wet. They're releasing their moisture is what they're doing. And so just keep stirring. No rush at this point. Make sure the rest of your ingredients are ready. And so one of the secret ingredients in this, there's sort of two secret ingredients in this sauce. First, look, instant sauce maker, cream. All right, on Prince Edward Island, that little pink box, everybody knows what that is. That's ADL cream right there, the best on the planet. Cream. Every chef's instant sauce maker. There's not very many ingredients out there we can't make a sauce out of with some cream. But that's not good enough for filet mignon. And so I suggest reach into your liquor cabinet. We were into the gin earlier, but choose a port wine or another fortified wine, a Marsala or a Madeira or a sherry. Those are all great choices at this point, or a classic port wine like this one. So half a cup ready to go, cream's ready to go, and the mushrooms are ready to go. They've released their moisture. I can see clearly on the bottom of the pan moisture. It's like they're starting to get soupy all by themselves. Okay, and once they're at that point, you're ready to move on. Okay, so next step, just add in that, and you can add both liquids at this point. Add your half cup of port wine, fortified wine. That extra little bit of alcohol locks in all that sweet flavor, and of course the cream. And I believe we're calling for 1 single cup of cream. This is more than enough to make this sauce. Keeping in mind the relative volumes. You've got all that mushroom mass, a little bit of cream as well. Okay, there we go. And that's, full cup. So let's have a close look now. Okay, I'm just going to stir this together. Elle, you can have a closer look. So you can see the relative volume in the pan right now. Okay, this is not sauce yet. It's a bit of mushroom stew. Okay, so what I want to do now is reduce that volume. So I'm going to turn this heat back up to the highest possible setting, that flame right back up high. I'm going to sort of wipe down around those sides, make sure there's nothing that's going to burn on those sides. And now we're going to reduce the sauce. We're going to reduce the volume. We're going to remove liquid from the sauce. And in doing so, concentrate flavors, thicken it, and take it into that sort of sauce territory. Okay, double checking my recipe. I think I've got everything in. John, how are you doing? How's it going out there? You ready to cook some filet mignon?
Sorry, Chef. Yes, I had you on mute. We are in the background. Evelyn is plugging away. I'm being lazy today. I'm just watching you.
Oh, that's cool. I'm not being lazy today. Hey, I've got an immersion blender for this coming up too. That's one of our sort of shortcuts. I just want to wait for this to come up to the simmer and show you. But this is where you have to sort of trust your own judgment when you're making a sauce like this. You know, it's watching it transform would be a good word. Watching it go from this, you know, it's not even simmering yet, soupy mess. Like that's more of a mushroom soup right now. But then thickening and losing volume and staying present. And you're going to have to make the call. You're going to have to say, hey, it's down far enough. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? If you step away and you let this just boil and boil and boil, eventually all the water leaves and you're left with just the milk fat cream and a bit of a mess, but it's still going to taste awesome. So it's not like failure possibly lies ahead here. It's not like this choice is somehow momentous. You know, we make plenty of momentous decisions in our life, but deciding when the sauce is ready is generally not one of them. And I guess I'm saying that to you just in the sense of, hey, so often I found over the years, so many of us are just bound by this idea that there's always a hard right or wrong in the kitchen, that it's binary perhaps in the kitchen, that it's only this way or that way. And that can lead to this, just that sense of fear that if I don't know the way or I'm not experienced in the way, then I'm going to screw it up somehow. And that's what I'm trying to push back on. That's what I'm trying to say is, no, not so much.
Sorry, Chef.
Okay, so
One quick question
um,
for you, while you're
sure.
working on the sauce. This is going back a few minutes ago, but I didn't want to disrupt you because you were in your group there. But it involves salting the meat. Is it better to use regular salt, kosher salt? Does it depend on the meat? Any suggestions in
Sure.
regard to that?
Which salt should we use when we're pre-seasoning the meat, when we're taking the time to season the meat an hour or so in advance? Which salt? Should we use a fine salt? Should we use a kosher salt? We use a kosher salt. We use a kosher salt because it's a flakier salt, and that coarseness, the texture of the salt, actually helps facilitate the process. It's in fact, if you're in the process of koshering, drawing moisture out of things, you quickly realize that the coarser salts would just work far better than the finer salts. So yeah, stick to a coarser kosher salt. I'm noticing as we chat about the salt, as soon as this sauce comes up to the boil, it doesn't take very long for it to reduce. The cream is already 35% fat already. So it's already 1/3 fat. There's only 2/3 water that's got to go anyway. And honestly, you don't want all of that water to go. You know, you want about half of that water to go. So it's going to happen fairly quickly. It's happening right in front of me. I can see this thickening nicely. Al, I'll try and pull it closer for you. Folks, you can sort of see how quickly, all right, that starts to thicken. It really does start to thicken quickly. I'm just going to let this just go for just a notch longer. And I think I want to finish this sauce. You may find yourself tonight with a little bit of extra time. If you do have some extra time in your kit tonight, fresh thyme, the herb, feel free to chop it up a little bit and add it to the sauce. I've already taken the time to chop some a little bit. It's a fair addition to this sauce, a little bit of thyme. So in we go. Not too much though. Mushroom sauce, port wine, pinch of fresh thyme. Things are definitely looking up. And I'm going to call it this sauce. I think it's reduced enough. Al, how are you doing? You see that with that simmer going right there? It's on full simmer. And I can see that the cream and the port wine and the juices of the mushrooms have really combined. The vigorous nature of the simmer, we might say, is what sort of homogenizes those various disparate liquids. All this action right here, and I can see it. It's nice and thick at this point. And so the next step is this bad boy right here. You've got options at this point, 4 options. In fact, one thing you could do, if you don't have a blender or any way of pureeing that, skip it. It's tasty as all can be right now. Instead of using a plate tonight, maybe get one of those fancy shallow bowls and just keep this more at the, oh, honey, I made a port wine mushroom stew tonight, creamy mushroom stew or something under that tenderloin. So that's always part of a chef's repertoire, is to just change the name of the thing, all right? That's one possibility. Second possibility, puree it in your stand blender, whatever's sitting on your countertop right now, your smoothie maker, that sort of thing. Or if you don't have that kind of blender, into your food processor, which doesn't do as good a job, but it's still a good option for pureeing a liquid. I choose the last option though. My favorite option is one of these time savers right here, my immersion blender. You know, it just saves so much time, because instead of transferring the sauce over into something else, I'm just gonna, you know, puree it right here in place. So here we go. Such a useful tool to have, time saver right here. And it takes a second. Hopefully you can hear me over the machine, but this is a whole family of fascinating sauces. The idea that you can thicken a sauce with a vegetable puree. I mean, in essence, that's what's happening here right now. Now, honestly, as I look at it, I don't like how smooth that's getting. You see how lumpy that still is? That needs a little time. I think I might be rushing that a little bit. If you discover this in your sauce, in essence, I thought what had happened, it's not pureeing because I didn't give it a chance to simmer long enough. It turns out it's not pureeing because I haven't used the test kitchen immersion blender in a while and the top was still on it. Let's try again, shall we? Here we go. This is the wonderful thing about Food Network. Cut that. Cut it right out. Edit it out. It's gone. Oh, look at that. So smooth. What a wonderful tool. And again, back to where I was. This is, in all seriousness, as a vegetable puree sauce. Perhaps I'll finish first. There we are. This is a very interesting way to make sauces, to puree vegetables. It's classic. It can be very healthy if you're not using, you know, the cream, but it's a time-honored way to make a sauce, just to puree up some vegetables. And so the sauce at this point is nearly made. There's one more major set of ingredients coming into this. So I'm just going to set it aside. And now it's time to turn our attention to the steak, to cooking the filet mignon. Before I do, does anybody out there have any quick questions about the sauce itself? Just let me know. Otherwise, we're going to start thinking about steak time. Okay, so, wow. You know,
Sorry.
filet mignon for a lot of us, I think we would fire up the grill out back, you know, get a fire going, that sort of thing. Perfectly valid way of cooking it. But there's another tool in our arsenal as chefs that's just as valid as a fire, and it is a heavy duty cast iron skillet. That's what this is right here. This kind of heft, you just can't beat it. And it is a way to cook a steak, especially a special steak, to get it nice and crusty, and to not overcook it and the like. And so that's why tonight I'm calling for a cast iron skillet, a good heavy skillet. If you've got one of those on hand, that's what you want to what you want to use. So to start cooking the steaks, we've already seasoned them, but I haven't added the pepper. The pepper flavor doesn't need that long seasoning time. The pepper's not going to absorb into the flesh. The pepper can be added at the last second, just as I'm doing right now. But of course, make sure you add pepper, salt and pepper. I mean, that's really the secret of good beef steak cooking. It's always just salt and pepper. You know, you don't need all kinds of elaborate blends and spice this, that, and the other thing. You just need good salt and pepper and lots of it. Notice that? I mean, clearly, you know, I'm not afraid of pepper, nor should you be. Okay, next up, back to the pan. We're going to use cast iron because cast iron is so good at radiating heat, at holding the heat and radiating the heat. So you've got to control the heat of the pan. I strongly suggest you use a medium high heat on this pan. That's where I've set my burner, medium to medium high. And then I'm going to start to watch for the cues that say to me the pan is in that high zone. I'm hedging my bet slightly. I'm not saying go to very, very high, the highest you can, because I don't want you to burn the meat either. I don't want you to burn the oils. So it's somewhere just below the highest heat setting is what works best. Next up, we're going to cook the steaks in butter. But if we put butter in that hot pan, we're going to ruin the butter. And so here's a little bit of a secret. First, add that splash of grapeseed oil, just a little splash, not much. And then put the butter directly in the center of the oil, right in the oil itself, okay? The butter melts in the oil, and the butter's protected in the oil, okay? The oil protects the butter from burning. And you can tell that pan's hot. It's sizzling hot right away. That's what we're hoping for. You know, we want heat, and I'm going to keep it sizzling. If I can't hear the pan, I'm going to get worried. In fact, it's not quite hot enough. I mean, have a look. The butter is just kind of sitting there finishing browning. You know, that's not hot enough for me. So it's just starting to smoke there. A little bit of a wisp. Now comes the meat. Okay. There we are. Now we've taken the time to temper the meat. It's come out of the refrigerator. It's not cold. It doesn't have to go from hovering at refrigerator temperature, swing all the way up to room temperature, and then continue to cook temperature. Instead, it only has to move from room temperature to cook temperature, a much narrower range. That benefits the cook. That makes it easier for you. So at this point, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest thing I'm paying attention to right now is sound. Sound is the number one thing. What I see doesn't really matter. I can talk to you folks and just listen and know what's going on in this pan. That sizzle tells me everything. That is the sound of flavor. That is the sound of a crust building on the bottom of this tenderloin. So if you don't hear the sizzle, then you're not cooking it. You're just simmering it. It's wet and that sort of thing. So just letting it hang. That's the idea. Just taking the time. Okay. And I can see it. I can see little wisps of smoke. I can see the brown butter. It's happening. And feel free to have a look underneath. I mean, it's not brown yet. It's not brown, but it's getting there. It's getting there. And it's certainly not crispy. Now, another thing to keep in mind, of course, is the size of the pan that we chose tonight. Relatively small pan. I wouldn't want to be using a much bigger pan unless I was cooking more steaks, obviously. If the pan was much bigger, that's just so much more surface area that I've got to worry about in the pan, surface area that might get away from me. I don't want that happening. And so this is a perfectly sized pan. That butter is going to add so much flavor, you know, taking on that risk, if you will, of cooking the tenderloin with butter. Well, it is all about flavor. I mean, certainly the oil will give you that beautiful crust, but adding the butter elevates the flavor of that same crust. So I've got this particular burner at the moment on my highest setting. I've got one of those gas stoves going right now where the biggest burner is here in the center. I'm not using the biggest burner. I'm just sort of barely keeping the sauce warm off to the side of that big burner. But I'm using this secondary burner, and it's generating more than enough heat for these steaks. Okay? They're not burning. They're not overcooking. They're not going too quickly. And so what's happening is I'm being patient. I'm allowed to take the time. Look at that beautiful crust starting to build, okay? But not overcook the meat. That's what I'm mostly concerned about. Don't overcook it. Don't overcook it. But I do think now it's time to flip. Look at that color. Look at that crust. Okay, we'll zoom in there close for a sec. You can really see it. Okay. And listen to it as well. Beautiful. It's so important that this cooks quickly as well, that that crust forms quickly, because I don't want the heat to penetrate. If it takes too long to make that crust, then the heat is going to penetrate to the center of the meat and overcook it. Once I flip the meat, next step up, start basting it. Have some fun with all that thyme we gave you tonight. Put the thyme right in the fat. I'm also going to take those last 2 cloves of garlic that we had set aside. I'm just sort of slicing those thinly. I'm going to baste those, put those in that butter as well. I am going to add a touch more butter though, just a touch more. I like the control I have over this pan right now, so I'm adding butter because I'm trusting that I'm not going to burn it. And I'm frying up the thyme. You'll smell it. It just adds so much flavor. Once the thyme is in, and I'm starting to feel like, you know, that steak's probably getting close to done, then I can add this garlic. I don't want to burn the garlic. I mean, I can take a little bit of brown on it, but you can see what's happening. I'm using the thyme as sort of my stirrer, if you will. Just keep it all moving around. See all that butter in there? The butter, the garlic, the thyme. This is the aim of, this is what you want to see in your pan. All that flavor heading into that butter. You can even get fancy now. Bring the steaks down, put all the stuff up at the top, put the steaks kind of in the middle of the pan, like this, and let the butter come to the bottom. See what's happening? And then baste the steaks. All right, just this pan is in the zone. This is where I want to be. Like every second right now is adding more and more flavor to this right now. And of course, every bit of this juice you see, well, guess where it's going? It's certainly not getting wasted. Okay, so this, now it becomes about when is it done? I'm going to turn the pan off. The steaks are more or less done. They're going to need a time, just a moment or two to rest. And it's time to fire the asparagus. So this is one of those points when you're cooking, when it can seem like things are going to get away from you. And when you sort of set that mark of, hey, I want to time everything. I want to get it all just right. It can feel like it's, you know, oh my God, what do I do? So best advice, just breathe. Just breathe. Let's take a moment. Steaks aren't going to, I'm not going to lose those steaks. They're sitting there, all that beautiful flavor, any juices that drip out of them, staying in the pan. It's ultimately going to end in the sauce. But here, take a close look, because here's something you can do. Just taking a moment and setting the steaks up on top of that thyme, getting it away from the direct heat of the pan. That's not a bad idea. And that's going to give me a second to just check those potatoes. Haven't had a look at these in a while. See how that pan's doing? Oh, it smells so good. Okay, now this is where the pan handle comes in. I want to be able to mix this, right? So let's see what we got. Okay, oh yeah, they're coming together. And the garlic is roasting up so nicely. The mushrooms, this all roasted up beautifully. Okay, so I'm going to leave that out. That's good to go. Steaks are resting. And now it's time to fire that asparagus. I'm curious, how's everybody doing out there? I'm hoping I'm not getting too far ahead. Let's take a moment and look at steaming. asparagus in particular, green vegetables, steaming is without question my favorite way of cooking a green vegetable. I don't want to overcook the vegetables. So I've got a little steamer basket rigged up over here. There it goes. It's just a perforated basket set over a pan of simmering water. Classic, simple method so that the green vegetable itself does not actually sit in the water. It doesn't boil in the water. That's so essential. Boiling green vegetables in water, you know what happens. You end up pouring out down that sink all that goodness, that colorful water, that green muddy water. That's vitamins, that's flavor, that's stuff you should be eating. And so fortunately, this is a lesson I've known for a long time. Just simply steaming vegetables. You don't need a big complicated cooking method to cook vegetables. It's often just the simplest possible thing is the best method. And of course, that's just steaming them. So I'm going to give those a moment. And let's start to think about the plates. This is kind of the fun part next. So when you sort of get down to the wire and it's time to plate everything up, when you're serving up filet mignon, something that's special, I think it's important to plate it specially too, continue to show respect for the ingredients. So I want to show you just a couple of, let's call them tricks, perhaps just a couple of simple ways that we might put the same ingredients on different plates and make the same ingredients look different. So we'll just have a little bit of fun. Well, so those are the two plates we're going to work with. I'm just giving the asparagus a chance to steam. And let's start with the sauce. So have a look at the sauce. It's nice and creamy and thick, but it's not done yet. So what I'm going to do, if we take a quick look at the pan, all those beautiful juices that the steaks have generated, I'm just going to sort of set the steaks aside for a moment. And then I'm going to take all those juices and encourage them to go right into the sauce. I don't necessarily need the garlic bits or the thyme or anything. I just want the juices. There's so much flavor going on right there. So just taking a moment. If your pan by some chance gets away from you and maybe it starts to brown and get a little crispy, the pan itself, you can always put a splash of water in it just to release up some of that flavor and just make sure it ends up in the actual, sauce. You can see what's happening. So just before I stir it, just have a quick look. I think it's really clear what's happening. I mean, all that brown butter goodness, all that meat juice goodness, all that roasty goodness in that pan is now in the sauce. So again, all of this, of course, if you're not cooking along tonight, you want to give this a whirl some other time. It's all right there in the writing. It's all right there in the in the actual words of the package. So what a nice sauce. Feeling good. Okay, so here we go. Let's sauce up the plate with this beautiful no roll lip. I think I'll just start this plate simply. I'm going to go with, let's see, we'll just do a puddle in the center. Okay, classic, all right? Take the plate, just, okay, puddle in the center. All right, next up, let's put the filet. Now I'm putting the filet just to the one side of center. There's my center line. There's my center line. And the filet is just to one side of center, leaving me room on that other side, okay, to get fancy with the potatoes.
Sorry, Chef. While you're doing that, a question did come up. Just wanted to ask you, and it's in regard to the degree of doneness of the meat. So, for example, I saw when it was in the pan, you use your fingers, you're a pro.
Sure.
If somebody is making,
Let's talk.
it's a good idea. If somebody's making two different steaks, for example, one medium rare and one well, how do they determine that based on either using that type of test or timing in terms of how long it should stay in the pan?
John, it's a great question. John's asking, of course, doneness. I kind of skipped right over that part. In the recipe, I'm calling, it calls for 120-degree internal temperature. Use a classic, one of these classic digital probes, thermal probes. They're available. I mean, most of us have them. They're pretty standard kitchen kit these days. Taking the internal temperature of the meat, like literally sticking the thermometer right in the center of it, is your most accurate way. And when you read 120 degrees Fahrenheit, you know it's done. That would be that nice, beautiful medium rare to medium. The meat is cooked through, it's heated, it's not dried out, it's still got lots of color. Honestly, as a chef, I think one of the most single ridiculous things that we deal with in the world of cooking is this idea that there's 5 different ways to cook meat or any vegetable or any fish or whatever. There's only one way to do it, the right way, not to dry it out. So you'll notice I haven't included tips on how to cook it well done. You don't cook filet well done. I mean, that's like driving a Ferrari filthy dirty and scratching the windshield. You know, can you tell I feel strongly about this? But I mean, if you need your meat well done, well, just cook it a little longer. You get it up to that 130, 140 internal degrees, the color's going to be gone and it'll be just fine. I hope that's helpful. Let's add some asparagus. Here we go. Okay, so I love this at the last second, just keeping it nice and green, not overcooking the asparagus. It's just so essential to me. And I think we'll just sort of do it classically right there in the center, just sort of piled on, sort of covering up that center line. I like the way the tips are all sort of fanned out towards you there. And let's see, we can, of course, do that classic garnishy business, you know, sort of thing like that. So there's one way of doing it. Okay, that's very classic, you might say. Nothing particularly innovative, but it does show just taking the time, covering the ends of those asparagus. I mean, it's just a classic way of making a plate look beautiful. Okay, just the way the lines work, the way they all sort of flow together. So let's call that the classic version. And you know, and I'm encouraging you, have some fun with it. Try something different. So another way of doing it would be this. Let's try to change up how we do the sauce. So let's do the sauce, perhaps start with a bit of a puddle up top here. Get rid of that little bit of herb. And then sort of take your big spoon and draw it, okay? Draw it, just like that, okay? So I'm sort of smearing it right there. And then to me, it just feels like the beef's got to live right there, doesn't it? Like it's just got to. It's just got to go right there. And then, of course, I don't know, maybe we, let's see, I feel like the asparagus wants to be next. Okay, I feel like asparagus next. So what if we try something like this? Just a little bit of a back and forth, perhaps. Kind of thing. I'm totally making this up as I go. And then adding those potatoes in there. But wait, there's more. You know, it's nice to know you got seconds in the kitchen too, right? And here we go with some of that. Oh, that beautiful sort of compote that you're going to have. This garlic mushroom compote. Oh, that's the good stuff right there. Some of that. Look at those bites of garlic right there. My God, this is good stuff. Good eating tonight. And then again, still go for it with that great big thyme pluche. Something sticking way up high. I mean, that's kind of classic. There it is. So look at that. Have some fun with it. See what you can come up with. Can't wait to eat this stuff too. That delicious, delicious sauce. Tastes like mushroom, super smooth. The port wine, the sweetness of it, it all works so, so well. Take your time with this. I realize that I may have gotten ahead of lots of us that are cooking along tonight. So feel free to just sort of finish up at your own pace now over the next few minutes. At this point, I do want to show you one snappy, quick dessert idea that's sitting right there on the shelf for so many of us. Again, maybe it's for a party at your house this year, a special occasion, or maybe you find yourself somewhere else and you just need to pull something out of a hat. Well, there is a classic dessert and arguably one of the world's great desserts, one of the gold standards. You know, we can work so hard in a pastry shop and put so many flavors together on a composed dessert. But on our best days, we're still trying to just hit the simplicity of a classic affogato. Nothing better, espresso and ice cream. And this time of year, well, see what you can find for ice cream. There's so many different types of holiday ice cream. I happen to like eggnog ice cream. This works perfectly fine, though, with just straight up classic good vanilla ice cream. This time of year, though, why not use some eggnog ice cream? Scoop these in advance, use a little festive bowl. You can use a classic little espresso shot mug, that sort of thing. Have them ready in advance. Have your espresso machine all fired up. And hey, if you don't have one of the gold standard Brevils, consider getting one because man, these things are awesome. And then it's just as simple as drawing a shot. Okay, just drawing that shot right there, that espresso shot, and that crema just pouring out onto that ice cream is just one of the world's great treats right there. It's that good. And you eat it right away, that hot and that cold all together. Oh man, you don't wait. Even when the TV camera's rolling in your kitchen, you still eat it right away. Mm, 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 mm. So good. Oh, especially with that eggnog ice cream. That's really, really good. So wow, look at us. We have cooked up quite a storm here tonight, John. Dan, thanks again. Look at all these different things we've tried. Why don't we get caught up on any Q&A and anything that I can clarify? I'm gonna take a seat, I think, and I'm really pleased with this, John. I think that was a wonderful challenge this year to dive into filet mignons. You know, that's like master's level, eh? We're not talking burgers here, are we?
Well, it's been fantastic, Chef. It's certainly one of our favorite treats. Usually, usually on the grill outside in the summertime, but in the northern hemisphere, we have to find ways to still enjoy treats like that throughout the winter months too. So,
That's right. You could argue that a cast iron pan is kind of that winter inside fire pan. You know, I mean, a filet mignon is one of those steaks. It doesn't have a lot of natural flavor of its own because it is so tender, but that texture is just so memorable, and it benefits so much from adding contrast and from adding the caramelized flavor of a crust and the texture of a crust. And of course, one of the best ways to get there is in the backyard in the summer over that super hot grill of yours, you know. But in the wintertime, just hauling out that cast iron pan, preheating it, using butter, doing all the things we just did, another wonderful way too.
yes, it's that is the odd Sunday breakfast for us, Chef, is steak and eggs, and on the cast iron pan, we've learned to use that, but it's not something that everyone does, but it's fantastic. There was a question about the potatoes and the mushrooms, and everyone realizes that it depends on the size of the potatoes and whatnot, but
Sure.
they're asking questions about how long in the oven for that.
Yeah, and thank you. Again, it does sort of come down to your personal judgment in your kitchen. There's a lot of variables here. For instance, the ovens I use are convection ovens. They have fans in them, and I would strongly suggest that if you have a convection oven in your kitchen at home, use it every single time. Never don't use your convection fan. Always turn on that convection fan. Whether the recipe explicitly, implicitly says it or not, just do it. And so I'm running a fan here, moving the air around, making it more efficient. And those potatoes were relatively small, and they tenderized pretty quickly as well. Just taking the time to preheat the pan in advance, that sped it up a little bit. So just trust your judgment. Trust your judgment. If you're really keen on the timing side, no problem. Just finishing up, making sure the potatoes are basically nearly done before even starting to cook the steak. The potatoes are not going to somehow ruin themselves in 15 minutes or so. Hope that's helpful.
It is. And Chef, back to the salting of the steaks. A question actually from my wife, Evelyn. She asked, do you pat the steaks dry first?
No, no. Thank you, Evelyn. Let's be clear. Yes, starting with a steak dry that has been patted with standard paper towel, and then seasoning that dry steak. Yes, that's the way to go. But once you get to the end of that resting period, you'll discover that the steak seems moist. Don't dry it at that point. That moisture is vital. It's going to help form the crust on that meat to some degree. But yes, just to clarify.
Thank you. And sorry, follow up from Evelyn, Chef. Would that apply to all meats? Would that apply to pork, for example, pork chops?
Yes, that whole pre-seasoning thing helps on all meats. It's best felt though on beef. Beef is where you're going to feel it the most, where it's going to be most evident. And this is where we're getting close to one of those lines that starts to seem and suggest that there's this really difficult thing in cooking. And oh my God, I got to time it out and get it all. So my advice to you is this: when you cook beef, steaks in particular, expensive meat, like fillets, tenderloins, strip steaks, all those wonderful beef steaks, prime rib steaks, porterhouse, anything like that. When you cook a good big beef steak, pre-season it. When you're cooking things like pork, chicken, lamb, goat, whatever else you're cooking, don't worry about it so much. The effects are not as profound. Leave that to the pros. Let us worry about which meats, what timing, this and that. Where you're going to get the most effect, where you're going to have the most profound flavor effect at home, is when you take the time to temper big, thick cuts of beef in advance, get them out of that refrigerator an hour in advance, at least an hour in advance, and take the time to pre-season that meat. That reaction works at about 90 minutes or so to 6 to 2 hours is the sweet spot. But again, doesn't this start to sound complicated? Because even just taking, an hour and letting that meat warm up, seasoning it, letting it sit there for an hour or more, it's gonna work just fine. You're gonna get a great reaction to it. It is a level up, but 90 minutes more or less is the mark.
Perfect. So actually, one more question about the potatoes, Chef. Being a Dutch woodhead, and those of the people that know me well would attest to how stubborn this woodhead is. I love my potatoes, Chef, and we often blanch them before we roast them.
Sure.
We find that really gives us a tender, certainly tender inside.
Yes. Oh boy, John, you stumbled on to one of the great secrets of cooking. Pre-cooking a potato before you get it to brown and crusty. I mean, empires have been built on that basic idea. That's the essence of a McDonald's French fry right there. French fry. Pre-cooking that potato, then going ahead and shooting for brown. Our signature golden brown crusty potato that we serve at the inn every night, it's nearly mush before we actually start that browning process. So yes, preheat, pre-cooking, pre-boiling, whether it's small round potatoes, chunks of potatoes, taking them right to the point where you're almost about to lose the structure of the potato can actually really pay off when you then take it and put it into that caramelizing environment. As I said, like reputations have been made off of this alchemy.
Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah.
I think that does it from our kitchen.
Sure. Well,
See that.
it's a bit of an extension there, that kitchen to this kitchen tonight. And and I think, John, that all the kitchens that are a part of this evening, I think we all more or less have the same goal in mind as we head into the next few weeks, as we spend time together over the holidays. The kitchen, your kitchen, my kitchen, they're the heart of the home. And I think it's so important that we remember this time of year that even even tonight, working so hard at cooking this filet mignon and all those bigger extravagant spreads ahead of us, that giant turkey, that roast beast, or whatever it is that's in your family's traditions. Really, what matters though at the end of the day, it's not that food on the table anyway, it's who's at that table. It's who's there with you, your friends, your family, and your community. And I think, John, Dan, that's what I'm thankful for tonight, is just to be a part of your community, to take some time and help you continue to build your virtual community. I know you've had a very successful year this year, and it's nice to help you cap that off. So thanks for having me along, John.
Oh, thank you, Chef. I can see a lot of people are are turning their cameras on, Chef, and I'm not sure if there are a couple of questions that some of our friends might like to ask. Are you able to take a couple of questions
Sure.
from our team?
Absolutely.
And I'll wrap it up here in a couple of minutes. Paul or Dan, maybe Paul or Patricia, any of you, would you kindly, so we have everyone muted, Chef, so just give us a second to unmute the
Sure. Take your
folks. If
time.
you have a question, people, you'll have to hit the unmute button at the bottom of your screen to come on and ask Chef a question, as he has a well-deserved drink.
Maybe have them raise their hand so we know who to unmute.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Sorry. Dan, you got this down, Dan. You're good.
Yeah, at the bottom, you'll see a little hand on your screen, folks, which is the raise your hand button. So while we're waiting to see if there are any questions, Chef, you've certainly nailed it on the head about family. I was telling that very story today to somebody, one of the attendees actually, that, and as corny as that's going to sound to some who may not know me that well, but this is as much of a tradition. It's part of the family that we find that we are lucky to share with you and with all of our friends and clients that are here tonight and today. And we're lucky to be able to do this with you. And I said that after the first year, Chef, and I'll say it at the end, but it'll be interesting to see what we do next year.
Sure. Good stuff. Well, it is nice to share, and it's nice to, of course, be here on Prince Edward Island. We're heading into our holiday season. The kids are all fired up. Everybody around us is excited, and there's so much hope and promise next year as well. And looking forward to, after 10 years with the NFA Fortune, we're ready on the cusp of new once again, and trying some amazing new things there next year. So lots ahead for all of us.
Actually, I have a question, Chef. Do you have a traditional Christmas breakfast that you serve or that you cook with your family? Do you cook together on Christmas morning, or is that all on your big shoulders every year?
We sure do. We have wonderful Christmas breakfast traditions. One of our favorite traditions is the fruit salad, the legendary Christmas morning fruit salad. We'll take the time. I'll go shopping in the days in advance, and we shoot for 20, 30. We've cracked 30 different fruits in that salad, and we'll get a big watermelon and carve it up into a big fancy bowl. And there's just something about after we've opened up half the presents, the kids, we all just head into the kitchen. We make eggnog pancakes on Christmas Day. We make pancakes with eggnog, but it's that fruit salad. Oh, and candy bacon. That's another one. Just crisping bacon off with lots of brown sugar on top of it. But again, back to that fruit salad. It's funny how, we can put so much thought and effort and money into something like, like $100 prime rib roast. But the one thing my kids remember the most, it always comes up, is that fruit salad, and just trying to get as much variety into that salad as possible. Like they're counting it. Oh, 24 fruit in the salad this year, Dad. Merry Christmas. So yeah, I just treasure that. And I think all of us, John, you and I and everybody here this evening, we all have those fun individual traditions, rhythms, and rituals that we've created for our families, for our holiday celebrations. And as we look ahead and as we anticipate and we think forward to this season, so often those are the memories, those are the things that come to the front first and foremost. Those are what we look forward to. So yeah, here it comes, fruit salad, baby.
That's a very unique tradition, Chef. I've never heard of that as a breakfast. It's awesome. I mean, that's
Yeah, right?
a lot of fruit for sure, but that is fantastic.
Lots of fun.
Yes.
Good stuff.
So, folks, you're all shy, and Lord knows 90% of you are not. Uh, are there any questions for our wonderful chef tonight?
John, I think what you've done is you've put these perfectly cooked filet mignons in front of everybody, and they're all like, it's time to eat this dang thing. Let me go.
Well, we have one here. There's Cheryl. Someone needs to, oh, there's another one. So there's a couple. Paul, would you unmute Cheryl and then Fred, please? Fred and Rachel?
Cheryl, I think you're unmuted.
I think I'm off now.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Chef, for a wonderful evening and some great tips. I will say I tried bread in the oven for the first time as a result of your recipe, and it was a big success. So now I'm motivated to try other things. So thank you for that. I have a question in regards to the sauce for the meat. Is there another variation of the mushroom, onion, and the cream that you could do for other types of meat that, I mean, we're eating right now as we're talking to you. It's just delicious. So,
Sure.
you know, I'm thinking pork tenderloin. Is there a variation of that sauce that I could do?
Yeah, what a great question, Cheryl. Thank you. I love that you have skipped right to the part called, hey, if I could try this, I could try that, I could make this my own. You're obviously an experienced cook. And so the first thing that occurs to me would be to make that sauce for pork with apples, to just pull the mushrooms and maybe even start with like just a simple slice of bacon all diced up. So that browns first, forget the brown butter, brown the bacon, and then build more or less the same sauce with apples instead of mushrooms. That would be really nice with pork. Even a touch of mustard in there, perhaps. You're going to have to let me know how it turns out.
Yeah, Cheryl, you're muted again.
Yeah, no, Fred's ready to go for the second question.
Yeah, wait, Cheryl
Sure.
still had a follow-up, Paul.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you'll have to hit that button again. Cheryl. There you
Yeah.
go.
There you go.
Am I interrupting somebody? I can mute myself.
No, just hold on. Let Cheryl finish out. She muted again?
Yeah, I don't know why. There you go.
There you go,
She
Cheryl.
remuted herself.
Sorry, Michael, I just want to say thank you so much. I've been a big fan. I've watched your show for many, many years, and this was just fabulous. So thank you for taking the time and doing this for John and Dan and others.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Sorry, Rachel. Go ahead.
Oh, it's totally fine, John. I'm sorry. Fred sends his best. He had to leave for hockey tonight for kids. So I just wanted to say this has been the most amazing. It has turned after 3 years into a family experience. So we have our kids and some friends of our kids here. Everybody was watching and learning. We're actually eating now because we prepped in advance. But my question was with the steak and the sauce, and you kind of answered that you can use the sauce. It's almost like it's a marsala sauce, right? You could change it. You change port to white wine or
Yep.
other things like that. So she kind of you answered my question, but I did want to say that we look forward to this every year. Your instructions are very easy to follow, and we really enjoy getting the cookbooks when you produce them, and just thank you. My question turned
welcome.
into a thank you, so I'm sorry.
Be sorry.
All good.
But
Thank you,
everything,
Rachel.
we're pretty experienced cooks, so your instructions are very easy to
I got a
follow.
question. Is it okay to dunk the beef in the gravy?
Yeah, Fred, you got this.
There
Good
we
luck on the
go.
ice tonight.
Absolutely. My daughter and her friend were helping us do all the prep work. So it's been a really, really wonderful experience. And we make your recipes. We still love the mussels from 2 years ago. Like, I'll tell you that everything is in our thing. And I want to show you one thing. Hang on. My kids didn't believe me, but I've been a fan of yours since my 14-year-old was born in 2009. So I dug this one out today. I'm like, I have to show John. You've always been a part of our household. So thank you very much
Thank
for a
you.
wonderful night.
Thank
That
you,
was it.
Rachel. Thank you. I really appreciate your sharing every bit of that, Rachel. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Chef.
If I may add to that, Rachel, it's funny because when we started chatting with Chef Michael again, to get this going this year, we were talking about that chef at home, and that we watched, Gabe, for example, as a little boy, and I had to ask Chef Michael, where is Gabe now? And so Chef Michael, if you wouldn't mind indulging those, Rachel was not
Sure.
alone. There are many of your Chef at Home fans on this call, so I think they would
Sure.
all probably fall out of their chairs when they hear this.
Yeah, well, it's amazing, John. It's been 20 years now. Like, it's just amazing. That show was such a huge part of my life for so long, and still ripples to this day. Gabe, who of course played such a huge role in the whole thing. He's grown up now. He's 23 years old and is actually running the craft cocktail program at the Inn at Bay Fortune. He's a hell of a bartender now. Also works hard in the world of programming and IT, has his own YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. But he's doing really well. We have two girls as well, Chaz and I. Ariel is going to be 16 next summer. She's started working in our bake shop. She's worked on the farm at the inn for a couple of years. And Camille, she'll be 12 soon. And gosh, she's more like a lit firecracker. You never know which way she's going to go. But it's just nice to have the kids with us, with Chaz and I. Chaz runs the hotel and the service side of things there as well. So it's very much a family enterprise.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, it's like I said, Chef, we were always jealous watching Chaz and Gabe getting to eat those meals on television. So now we get a chance to do it all a little different, but now we get to taste your cooking in our own kitchens.
Sure. Without as much editing.
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Good stuff.
All right. Is there anybody else?
There's one, Chris and Sue waved their hands. If you want to, I could unmute you now. If you like, that's sent. You just have to unmute. Chris and Sue.
There we go. I was just wondering, Chef, do you have an absolute favorite meal?
I do. Thank you for asking, Chris. It's an interesting question. What's your favorite meal? It's certainly one of those questions that get asked a lot, food writers, that sort of thing. And it's one of those questions where you're sort of like, I don't know, like, it's which one of my kids is my favorite. But honestly, I've been blessed. I've eaten some amazing meals all over the world, tried so many different things, been to so many great restaurants. And honestly, I don't remember half the time what I ate. I'm the kind of guy that remembers who was there. I remember the occasion. I remember the people that I was with. So my favorite kind of meal for me would be going to a brand new restaurant with people I love and respect, my wife among them, and just going somewhere brand spanking new that we're really looking forward to, that might be doing something innovative or simple or lovely or whatever, but just pushing the bounds a little bit, trying something new. I mean, I think for all of us, that's just one of the most wonderful parts about the restaurant discourse, is that opportunity to try new. And certainly for those of us working within the industry, working hard as chefs, that can be a source of inspiration. So yeah, I think that would be my favorite. Just get some people together and just go some red hot new restaurant somewhere in the world and see what they're up to.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Oh, just as a side note, my son was so disappointed that the bread wasn't ready because he wants to slap up all of the sauce that we create. So he's really enjoying it.
Patience, grasshopper.
Awesome. We too are looking forward to making that bread, Chris.
I think there's one more, Randy. You want to add one more question, or is that?
Yeah, it's actually not really so much a question as a somewhat of a suggestion / offer, but being that you're on the far east coast and I'm on the far west coast, that maybe you should travel out to Vancouver and we could do a summertime version of this West Coast flair with some West Coast seafood and barbecue and stuff. If you're ever out this way, Chef Michael, I'd love to show you around.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd love to be shown around. I have had so many wonderful seminal food experiences out west. You know, Vancouver to me is one of the world's great food cities, you know, and there's so much wonderful culture out there. You bet. So look forward to my next visit for sure.
Just keep away from Randy's Alberta whiskey, Chef.
I can hold my own, don't you worry.
But I smell an East versus West Coast battle coming, Chef and Randy.
I'll bring the oysters.
Awesome. All right. Well, Chef, we have getting too close to the end here. Last call, folks. Anything else? That pretty much does it.
Yeah.
So,
Right on.
Chef, on behalf of, sorry, is there somebody else, Paul?
No, that's it. I think we reached there.
Okay, thank you. So, Chef Michael, on behalf of Dan and Debbie, Evelyn, and Jose, Savan, Patricia, Paul, all of our team, certainly would like to say a big thank you on behalf of our friends and clients and family that are all here as well, enjoying another great night with you. We really appreciate it. It's like you said, it's not always what you're eating, but who you're with. And nights like tonight create memories for all of us, and it's not one that we will soon forget. So thank you so much for putting your heart and your soul into what you do and sharing that with us. We really appreciate it. We're very thankful.
Thank you, John. It's my pleasure. It's cooking at its best. It's all about sharing. So thanks for the opportunity. We're making memories here. It's a wonderful tradition. And for everybody here tonight with us, again, just enjoy the holidays ahead. Enjoy the time. Enjoy the time with your friends and your family, and look forward to doing this again. Thank you, John. Thanks, Dan.
Yes,
IBM, Cisco, everybody. i-Virtualize. Thanks a lot.
thank you.